as suggested, I will start with a question. So, just overall, with the idea that Joey just seems, not you, okay, there's got to be a way to,
we're going to distinguish this.
Joey with the Y is from their movie, and Joey with an I is this one.
So when we talk about Joey from the movie, you have to say Joey with the Y.
Yeah.
Cool, okay. So, Joey with the Y. Why does it seem like she's the only person that doesn't see that her marrying a black guy is weird?
I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that she is young, and this is really one of the first times she's experienced love. And I know that, like, just based on the concept of love itself, when you're in love, you feel like you're truly invincible, and, like, nothing should stand in the way of you being with that person.
Plus, she's 23.
Right.
And that's kind of ridiculous.
I've noticed that in common relationships, like, when you're so involved in love, you're kind of oblivious to everything else.
Yeah.
And you just kind of I would forget if I were in love, too, because I was so focused on that person that I would just kind of forget.
And, you know, I think age is a big part of it, too, because, like, John, he's just as much in love with Joey with a Y as Joey's in love with him, but he really does see it as, like, an issue, almost, that they're together even though they're different races.
Right, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with Joey with a Y's background as opposed to John's, because her parents were always very accepting of black people. Well, with John's parents, it was kind of a thing where they weren't unaccepting of white people, but there was that stereotype that most black people at that time probably had of white people, that they were the superior and that they needed to be treated with respect.
And there's even that part of the movie where Joey with the Y's parents are talking to each other, and they talk about how they raised their daughter, and so it's like, we always taught her that black people are her equal and all of that, but we never told her not to fall in love with the black guy.
Right.
And I think it's funny how they would say that, yet they're so concerned about the whole idea of them getting married because he's black, and they consistently call it a problem that they're getting married. Like, you can't, that's hypocritical.
Yeah, like, I think for basically the entire movie they refer to their engagement and their relationship as a problem. It's like, we have a problem, we're getting married. And it's like, that's awful, and that's sad.
Did anyone notice, or was it just me, that when they were talking about how he was, John was a doctor, the father was referring to, like, him trying to cure her problem?
I don't think I caught that, but it sounds like something he would say.
Yeah.
It's like, it's ridiculous. And so on the same, like, wavelength as the age issue making it a difference, why John seems like a super serious guy. Like, he's in his late 30s. He's a doctor. He's very, very professional. Why do you think that he would get engaged to a girl 14 years younger than him after 10 days, after just randomly meeting in Hawaii? Like, he seems like such a serious guy. That seems really out of character for someone like that.
I feel like he was kind of love-struck towards her, particularly because she was so young and she was accepting of him regardless of his race. And I think that that might have been something that he hadn't been exposed to a lot in his life.
He was, like, shocked by how open-minded she
so
was.
he gravitated towards her acceptance.
And also, she's a lot more mature than we'd expect her to be, because she's 23. I mean, there's still the young, naive innocence, but there's a part of her that's mature because she doesn't, she regards the color thing, and I think that's so important.
Yeah, like, both she and John, and this is very different than our culture today, but they are just completely open with the idea, like, yeah, we know that it's weird right now that we're a biracial couple. We understand that, and we hope you're okay with it. But I feel like people now would sort of beat around the bush with things like that, and I even think that their parents do that too. But then, as a couple, are very open to the fact that people might think it's weird and it's a controversial thing.
And I find it interesting the different perceptions that many people around them might have of their maturity level, because some people might see them as very naive, yet others, like the preacher, saw them as very mature for their age and very accepting, and they really knew what they wanted out of life.
Which I think us talking about this brings up a good question. As society, do we just assume that African Americans or people of color marry people of color as well?
And I think that in a way, like, we don't mean to, but we kind of do. Just because, like, especially in like TVs and movies or even like advertisements, like commercials, the like common American family, like even if they're African American, it's two people of the same color or of the same race. Like that's just the way I think we, probably not voluntarily, but like just not even on purpose, but we just, without trying,
we assume.
Same race.
I agree with you in some ways, but I also think that particularly in the last 10 years or so, it's gotten a lot better. Like a lot of TV shows you watch today, there's interracial couples.
Yeah.
And I know
think that media really tries to make that a thing.
I just wish there were more of it, if you know what I mean, like to raise awareness, because we just kind of assume things, and it's really unfair, because there are a lot of biracial couples that don't get a lot of recognition, and they do work.
Yeah, so often continues.
And I know that my personal opinion means nothing in the light of society, but I know, like, me personally, I honestly don't care. Like, I know that it might seem kind of hypocritical because I'm white and I'm a guy, but if I were to fall in love with someone, like, I don't care what their race is or anything. Like, I would be open to dating anyone.
And, you know, I think that is the common belief. It's like you don't care about race when it comes to romance. But I still think that when we do think of a common American family, we see everybody of the same race, and it's usually white, which is not good. It isn't, because we're just not, I think we're involuntarily not open-minded enough to just first thought imagine multiple races.
And with what you said, I think it brings up the point that John, necessarily, he didn't really care about her skin color or her pigmentation. He was worried about her personality, and he fell in love with the personality, because she's bubbly, and, I mean, I'm just going to put it out there, if I were a guy, I'd marry her. Anyone named Joie.
Well, of course.
Just kidding. Yeah, no, I would not do that.
Yeah, so, I know we talked about the preacher a little bit ago.
Oh, yeah.
He seems like the only person that was not shocked by the idea of them getting married and was very happy about it.
And I think part of that probably has to do with the fact that churches at this time weren't necessarily always discriminatory. Like, I think a lot of black and white people probably attended the Catholic Church.
Churches still don't. Like, they just disregard. I mean, there are issues with, like, people being gay and stuff, but the racial isn't as intense. And the whole point of church is to be welcoming and welcome people into Christ, and I think the movie shows a really good representation of what a pastor should strive to be.
And this movie was made in 1967, so at that point, black people were really coming out as being very, like, they were considered equals at that point, finally, because, you know, in the 50s it was kind of still not great. But I think that, especially time period-wise, the way the preacher was portrayed was very good at just portraying church in general and how
and Christianity.
And in religion, that races weren't really. Okay, so to end our discussion, we should cover the topic of Dolphus Raymond, which is the thing that connects this movie and the book. Yeah. Because, you know, that should probably be important for our To Kill a Mockingbird project. I probably talk about To Kill a Mockingbird.
No, we definitely don't talk about To Kill a Mockingbird.
Of course not.
Definitely not.
Why would we do that?
I find it very interesting how Dolphus Raymond and John in this movie are like two complete polar opposites, basically. Because, well, they aren't necessarily opposite, but they are perceived to be opposite. Because Dolphus Raymond he pretends to be a drunk in front of the community, only so their family won't be perceived as horrible.
Well, actually, what he says, I forget what he says exactly, but from what I was thinking was, Dolphus says that he pretends to do that so people that see his family have an excuse to understand what's going on.
Right, and I find it interesting how John, he's completely educated and everything, and so they don't have an excuse. And I think
the reason why Dolphus, though, he's pretending to be drunk, is so people won't try to ask the reason as to why he did what he did with a black woman. And I mean, I can differentiate the differences between, like, the characters. Like, John they're both successful in a way, but, like, John isn't afraid to be who he is. I mean, he's afraid of what people will think, but most of the time he's pretty confident, while Dolphus is not, and he's just scared.
Well, I don't even know if Dolphus is scared. It's like, they're very vague about why he does what he's doing, but it seemed to me, like, the way he says it, the way he, like, explains what he's doing, is that he pretends to be a drunk because he knows that other people that aren't as open-minded as him won't understand what he's doing, and so he's giving them a way to understand.
Right.
But John doesn't really seem to care if they understand. Like, he wants the approval of his future, like, father and mother-in-law.
The parents. Right.
But it's almost like it's more of I think he takes it as, like, marriage overall, and he's not really concerned with their opinions being their opinions as much as their opinions hurting his wife.
Right, and I definitely see where you're coming from with Dolphus. Like, I think that the reason he pretends to be drunk is out of empathy for the people who he knows are ignorant to equal human rights, and I think that he wants them, I feel like Dolphus wants them to truly understand, and he doesn't hide it out of fear. He hides it out of empathy for them and empathy for the greater good.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I think Dolphus could have. I'm not saying he does, but he could, because what the consequences would be if he didn't really hide it.
Yeah.
That's
like,
true. Yeah.
If he, like, showed the world, it's like, I'm like a well-mannered, self-respecting, intelligent man with no problems in his life that fully understands that I am with a black woman.
But I
like,
mean,
if he wasn't a drunk, then people would think that he was insane, or that, like, he should be punished.
Well,
even.
Here's something to consider. I'm sorry, I promise. Maybe the alcoholism thing isn't necessarily just about trying to hide, like, the reality. Maybe it's to numb the pain, and, like, he wants to escape the idea of people judging him. Because when you're drunk, you kind of don't have
It's like
your emotions are out of whack, and you don't really understand what's going on.
but he's not actually drunk.
I know.
Well,
That's
no,
the
I
point,
think
though, using it as a way to distract
I
himself.
think what you're
Oh.
getting is like, if they think he's drunk, he's like, oh, it's just the town drunk. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you for understanding.
Okay. But if he didn't come off that way, they would, like, people would put a lot more thought into what he was doing and, like, gossip about him a lot more, and it would almost, like, wreck his reputation if he didn't do it himself.
But back to what we said about the possible consequences that he might face. Hang on, I just got
It's
to
Dolphus Raymond confuses me.
Well,
I feel like
Yeah.
he could have been more open about it because Atticus was completely open that he was willing to defend Tom Robinson, and I mean, sure, there were consequences, and
His kids got targeted. They almost got killed.
right,
woo!
but
That's fine, whatever.
I mean,
I love kids. I love them.
if you think about it, it's basically the same situation.
Well, sorry.
No, that was my fault.
Well, I wrote this down because I know that we're sort of comparing Dolphus and John, but I put this down comparing Dolphus and Joey just because they're both the white people
That's
in the
true.
relationship. And
Exactly.
They both feel that they are privileged enough to date a black person without any repercussions in this time period.
Well, what I just wrote down while I was watching the movie is that the difference between Dolphus and Joey is that Dolphus pretends to be like a trashy drunk guy because he is maybe, whether or not he's afraid of what other people will think, he wants to control what other people think of him. While Joey is so like naive and like, maybe it's open-mindedness, maybe it's naive, maybe it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
She just doesn't think there would be a problem. Like, it comes off as like, oh, like, it's new, but there's no problem with it. No one will think it's weird.
And she's so in love that she just has no cares about what anyone. Yeah, she's searching for approval from her parents, but deep down inside, she's still like, yeah, we're getting married. This is happening.
And maybe it's less of a racial thing. Like, she doesn't think her parents will care about the race. Like, off the bat, she doesn't think that they'll even mind. They just think that, oh, well, you're getting married. Yeah, get approval from your parents. It's just a thing you do. So she goes and does that, not even considering how they'll feel about the race thing.
And I think that one of the biggest differences between Dolphus and Joey is their level of privilege. Because they both are privileged to the point where they think it's okay to date a black person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
But Joey is more privileged because she doesn't even want to hide it. I mean, Dolphus at least has sense enough to, like, try to make it look like, you know.
And the people are still accepting of Joey, and that's why she's more privileged, because the people actually, they don't care at the end of the movie. They're like, yeah, whatever, you're happy, go get married.
Right.
And, you know, I know that part of it might have, and first of all, this seems kind of like, I don't know, I feel a little bit guilty talking about this, because, you know, we're all white, and we're talking about, we're talking about it like they should have hidden it, but, like,
No.
it's
No.
from the 60s.
I don't.
I understand.
Yeah.
Right now,
It's
we're
from
good.
the 60s.
We're okay. We're talking in the idea, the ideals of the 60s.
Love is love is love. Sorry,
Yeah.
I really need to get that out. I wanted to
okay.
be in here.
Okay,
Clip
but
that and make it
yeah,
land. Just do it.
absolutely. So, but I don't know if it's as much white privilege. Like, I believe that white privilege has something to do with it because they both believe that, well, maybe not as much Dolphus because he's actually, like, putting in effort to try and control the public's view of their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But with Joey specifically, she seems to think that, like, she's always been raised as, like, she's, like, pure and innocent and wonderful. And, you know, she's white, so she probably hasn't faced as many issues as black people at that time. Most likely, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think part of the role that white privilege plays in this thing is that she's not even considering the consequences. So just to sum up, I feel like, you know, both of the stories really connect with each other, but at the end of the day, love is love, and I feel like people in both the book and the movie learn to understand that, and that's really great.
Right. As a society, I think that we need to realize that love is better than hate.